everyone, welcome. Can you hear me okay? Perfect. Oh, I can hear a bit of an echo. Okay. So welcome, thank you for joining tonight. My name is Siobhan, I'm Programmes Coordinator at the Faith and Belief Forum and I'll be chairing tonight's event. This event is part of the Faith and Belief Forum and Maccabi GB's week-long Fitness, Faith and Feeling Good Festival, which is an online interfaith health and wellbeing festival which highlights approaches to looking after ourselves at home, showcased by diverse partners from across London's faith, belief and cultural communities. This project is part of a wider piece of work by the Faith and Belief Forum and Maccabi GB as we work towards London's first interfaith fun run, which we hope will take place later this year, circumstances permitting. And I hope that you're enjoying the festival so far, taking part in some of the activities, and that you'll join us in taking part in the fun run later this year as well. Tonight we're joined by 4 brilliant panellists, all experts in the field of sports and faith engagement, and I'm delighted to be chairing and looking forward to what's sure to be a really interesting discussion tonight. So a few bits of housekeeping to tell you about. As it's a panel discussion, I'd recommend you view this event in speaker view on Zoom, which you should find at the top right of your Zoom window. That means it will focus in on the person who's speaking, and then later during the part of the session where we'll be posing questions to the panel, you might want to go into gallery view and see everybody's smiling faces. We are recording tonight's event, just so you're aware. That will be up after the event on the Faith and Belief Forum's YouTube page. If you don't want to be featured in that video, feel free to switch your video off. If you are posting about the event online tonight, please share your thoughts, reflections, questions. You can use the hashtag #FitnessFaithLondon, that's the festival hashtag. But we've got the chat here, and I'd love for you to kind of get involved. And the question we posed to you as you were kind of waiting for the event to begin was, what's an activity or practice that's helped your well-being during lockdown? So this whole festival really is about exploring how we're doing in lockdown and some new approaches to looking after ourselves. So let me see if anybody has shared anything they've been up to. Daily walks, yeah, I agree, getting outside has been really, really helpful. Had to start running. That sounds good. Yoga, that's great. And tomorrow, as part of the festival, we have a yoga session from National Hindu Students Forum. So if you want to do some more yoga, look out on the Faith and Belief Forum and Maccabi's social media pages. Daily walks as well. Great. But keep those introductions coming in the chat and let me know what you've been up to in lockdown that has helped your well-being. In the course of the event in general, please do keep it going in the chat, questions, thoughts, anything you want to contribute. We've also got the reactions button on the toolbar, which should enable you to clap or show a heart or show a celebration. So if there's anything you hear that really resonates with you, a thumbs up. If there's anything you hear that really resonates with you, feel free to go ahead and react as well. I'll be looking out for those. So online interfaith, online dialogue, it is a little bit different, and usually we would be meeting in person to have these discussions and getting to know each other and chatting in person, and I do miss that, but we can also get into some deep and interesting discussions online. At the Faith and Belief Forum, we do have a few interfaith principles that can help us with our online dialogue. So I'm just going to share my screen now and take you through very briefly just a couple of those principles that you might be interested in. So can you see it? Can you see the screen? Yeah, cool. So let's have a look. So the first thing to say is dialogue. What is dialogue? And you might want to think about it as a conversation that is different to a debate. So something we like to say at Faith and Belief Forum is dialogue, not debate. So it's about laying out our perspectives on the table rather than trying to argue which one is the right one or which one is the best one. So exploring different perspectives, experiences, points of view, rather than kind of arguing or trying to find the right one. But how can we actually do that online? So first thing is keeping in mind our aim of the session, or whatever it is that we're embarking on, spirit of learning. So tonight I'm really keen to hear all about the perspectives of the different panelists. I'm here to learn. Hopefully everyone in the room here is as well. And knowing that everyone's coming from a different place, different community, different areas of expertise. So being open to what we can learn from each other, and of course being respectful of everybody's different journeys. Speaking for ourselves, so at Faith and Belief Forum we use the tool I statements, so encouraging us to be really specific on what we're talking about, and to our audience members and our panelists as well, that would be about giving specific examples about, to back up what you're saying. So rather than making generalizations, it's helping us learn more by giving evidence, giving examples of what is it that you mean. In my experience, in my point of view, when I was working with this person or this community, that can be really helpful for spreading information rather than generalizations. And then finally, really important online, it's about shared responsibility for keeping each other safe. So unfortunately, sometimes online we do have troublemakers. So I am joined tonight by my colleague Nick, who, do you want to give us a wave, Nick? Nick is looking after the technical side of tonight, and will be helping to keep us safe. But if there's anything you want to flag to him, you can message him privately in the chat by using the drop down and selecting to message him. You can let him know if anything has happened that has troubled you, you want to tell him about, and he's there to kind of throw people out if we need to do that and that kind of thing. But hopefully nothing like that is going to be needed tonight. In worst case scenario, we would shut the session down if anything like that happens, and we can hopefully reconvene another day. But as said, hopefully that will not be needed. So let me stop my sharing now. And I would love to get started with our discussion. So I'm going to invite the panelists briefly to introduce themselves, tell us in a few sentences who they are, what their connection with this topic of sports and faith engagement is. Ashley, can I invite you to start for us?
Hi, yeah, you can. Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Lerner. I am the CEO of Maccabi GB. And yeah, delighted to be on the panel and partnering in this faith and sport festival, which is great. Maccabi GB, we are the Jewish community's provider of sport, health and wellbeing activity. On a personal note, I guess as CEO of a sports organisation, I should talk about my sporting prowess. I mean, reading like what Tim said about running 100k in Jan, I'm sort of embarrassed to sort of say what I've done. I'm a long-standing Spurs fan, so I'm not sure that counts as sport. I'm a past marathon runner, but I shouldn't really promote running after what Tim's done, 100k in Jan. And currently in lockdown, I'm an avid exercise bike cyclist. So that's how, that's me in a nutshell. And look forward to, discussing the organisation and the Jewish community's sort of history with sport.
Brilliant, thank you, Ashley, that's great. Yasmin, would you like to introduce yourself? Are you there? Okay, maybe we come back to Yasmin. Sam, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Good evening, everyone. Sam Sawley here. I'm the co-founder of Motivate Sports and Fitness, which is a community organisation based originally over in West London. We deliver a wide range of community activity to various diverse backgrounds, ages, and with various stakeholders. But I do that part-time, my full-time job, which I say 4 days a week. It feels sometimes like 40 days a week because it's really busy and fun. It's with good. And I work on a program called Model City London, which is a place-based approach, giving support to a community rather than just giving money out to specific organisations, like faith groups, youth clubs, schools, colleges, anyone that wants to use sport or physical activity to help change the landscape of their community, but is willing to spend a little bit more time communicating with each other. I've recently just finished a role after 2.5 years with Sporting Equals as well, which was on a program called Breaking Boundaries, which was a community integration project using the power of cricket to bring faith and non-faith groups together. So been doing lots of exciting things. Sporting prowess, not much anymore. I was an elite footballer and I played tennis up to quite a high level, but got introduced to at about 19 when I had a very bad knee injury, and the rest is history. And I say I never look back. I think I spent more time looking at those McDonald's ads. That says more about me. In terms of other highlights in my career, probably the biggest thing I did was I quit a very well-paid job in schools and education in 2016 and travelled to the Middle East and coached for football academy. And I dragged my wife along with me. So that tells you how patient a family I have. And that's me.
Great, brilliant. Thank you, Sam. Yasmin, are you able to contribute now?
Yeah. So I'm Yasmin Harun. I'm chair and founder of Muslim Sports Association. So we was established in 2014 and the charity became in 2019. And we aim to engage more Muslim women and ethnic diverse women into sports, a variety of sports. So we offer badminton, football, lots of different sports in participation, volunteering, coaching, and also trying to just get them more involved and having a voice within the industry, where we can. I encourage them to become committee members or even director roles. So I'm currently the London FA director and non-executive director at British Fencing, and I work like with Sam as well. We worked on that Breaking Boundaries project. So we look at engagement for the younger girls and also just general engagement of different sports and seeing how we can sort of make it a bigger, wider participation and make it more attractive for Muslim women to get engaged with.
Brilliant, thank you. And last but not least at all, Matt, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good evening. My name is Matt Baker. I am National Director for England for Sports Chaplaincy UK. That means I oversee chaplaincy throughout English sport. It's predominantly been football that's been my bag, and then I stepped up last year to oversee all of English sport. We've got about 500 chaplains right throughout the UK in sport, and so I'm engaging with them. I'm working with clubs. I'm also chaplain at my local football club. I know we've got a Spurs fan on here, but I'm chaplain at Charlton Athletic, where I've been for the last 21 years as chaplain there. So that's in terms of the role with sports chaplaincy. Sporting prowess, loved and played football as a youngster and athletics. It's not really claim to fame. I ran in a race against Colin Jackson once, if that name rings any bells of anybody. All I can say is I ran in the same race as him. It was a 4x1 and his team was a lot faster than mine, but nevertheless, it was a slight claim to fame. During lockdown, I had my 4th knee operation about a year or so ago. So that means I can't run. I'd love to go out running. But my youngest son, who's still at home, started rowing back in the summer. And you can't go out and row on rivers, etc., at the moment. But that meant they lent him a rowing machine. So I'm doing my best to get a bit of a workout on a rowing machine at home, which is kind of keeping things ticking over a little bit for me. So that's my lockdown exercise as well as walking the dog.
Great, thank you, Matt. And welcome all our panellists. It's great to be with you tonight and thank you for joining us. So let's begin this discussion then. I would love to start off by talking a little bit about the history and background of the work you do in terms of engagement with faith communities around sport, and what has that engagement looked like over time in your communities. So Yasmin and Ashley, I'd love to hear from you first about the Jewish and Muslim communities respectively. Would either of you like to begin?
Ashley, do you want to go first, or?
I'm happy to.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think first of all, I think on this panel, I should make it clear that what I say and how I communicate is I'm talking about Maccabi GB, and I think it'd be remiss of me to be speaking on behalf of the entire Jewish community. So I think that should be important to say up front. The Jewish community and Jews in history haven't been necessarily known for sporting prowess. However, as a small and a minority community of 280,000 members of the community in Great Britain, actually, we probably punched above our weight in terms of sporting excellence going back in time. And actually, the Maccabi movement in itself is a worldwide organisation. We're part of Maccabi Europe, and even in that we are one of 37 different countries. Each develops sport in their own Jewish communities in certain ways, but in Great Britain, give or take, we've been established for coming up to 80 years through different guises. And in the last 2 decades, we've really professionalized our offering and working directly with the Jewish community, with our organizations and schools as well, to ensure that as many members of the community can participate in sport, but also in health and well-being provision. In fact, if you go back into how Maccabi clubs worldwide were created, they were founded to combat discrimination, and Jews were not allowed to be part of sports clubs. And it was back in the first Maccabi, well, Jewish sports club dates back to 1895 in Constantinople, and it was around trying to give Jewish members opportunity to participate in sport. That thankfully we, 200 years on, we're able to live in free society and participate in sport. But for a community that is small in size, in the 280,000, it's important that we say a community that plays together stays together. And so there's a lot of Jewish sporting activity that takes place in Great Britain. We have Jewish football leagues, which is the most popular sport within the community. We have a junior league, we have a men's league, a masters league, predominantly based in London, but you also have in Manchester a Jewish soccer league there, and we have centres that are based in London, which is where the majority of the Jewish community live, but also in Manchester and in Scotland as well. And I think it's about, for us as a community, to not just what my passion is, and I believe the passion of Maccabi GB is, we want our community to play sport, but also to use sport as a way of interacting with their fellow members of the community, and also to express their own Jewish identity through our activities both here and internationally. And that's how we sort of work within Great Britain. And as I think the conversation goes on later tonight, we'll talk about how, as an organisation, we are proud to be to work within the Jewish community, but we're also proud to work within British society, and working cross-faith and interfaith as well is something that we're very passionate about as well. So I guess in a nutshell, I should say our head of education is on this call as well. I'm sure historically I've got a lot of facts wrong. I'm sure he'll correct me on the chat, but yeah, I think in a nutshell, I think that's how the Jewish community sort of integrates with sport at the moment.
Thank you, Ashley. That's great. Yasmin?
Yeah, so obviously the Asian community, especially Muslim women, are one of the highest in activity rates, and has always been at the bottom of the list in terms of activity participation. And when I started Muslim Sports Association, I found that there wasn't really a space that I felt comfortable as a Muslim woman to go and play and participate in different sports. So I wanted to provide that safe space for Muslim women who wanted to get back into sports or just wanted to continue playing sports, because I stopped playing sports at the age of 16. I loved sports at school. I was captain. I did athletics, football, I did all the variety of sports. But at the age of 16, there was nowhere for me to go and continue that. The sports industry didn't represent who I was as a person, as a Muslim lady. So I stopped playing. And I think it was about 2008, and I was really starting to miss it. I had my 2 boys by then. I just felt that I was disengaged from the community. I was just going to work, coming home, and that was it. And I wasn't getting any sort of exercise. So I started researching about what was out there for me, and it hadn't really moved on from when I stopped at school to when I wanted to get back. So I found an organization that helped me start up basketball. And for many, many months, that just had me, the coach, and another female lady. And I couldn't understand why it was that ladies weren't joining. So we had to do a lot of marketing to say that this was a safe space for women to come, where they could play either with their hijabs or without their hijabs, because it was strictly women's only. And I think they had the concerns and the anxieties were that we had Just Girls at that time. So there's a lot of Just Girls events, but there was a lot of men that could just walk through. So even though there were female only activities, men could still enter. And that was the reservations a lot of the women in the community had. So it was about building that trust and understanding what we were trying to achieve. And once those numbers started to gradually increase, we were getting more male ladies asking for different activities. And that's what we tried to achieve, is just a variety of sport that they can get involved in, that they felt safe in, that catered to their needs. That we understood the community, we understood their cultural needs, their religious needs, and then give them that confidence to then play outside as well. So what we've done is, for example, badminton, they played indoors in their social environment. And then we started to ask them whether or not they'll participate in leagues. And the questions would be, well, will it be female only? Can we play in our hijabs? And we spoke to the leagues and just asked a question. It was a matter of just asking the question. And they were very happy for our ladies to participate in that way. And then we did the same with football. So our ladies played indoor footballs without their hijabs. And then there was an opportunity for us to start a five-a-side football team. And there was a lot of anxiety. Obviously, they were very new to football. They didn't know the rules very well. But this was a new league for beginners. And we said, come on, we'll support you as MSA, obviously. We'll always be there every step of the way. It's just try it, have one game. And if you don't like it, we won't go and entered into the league. And they absolutely loved it. The team and the leagues and the referees, everyone was so welcoming. They didn't ask questions about the hijab. They were able to wear their jogging bottoms and baggy tops, and nobody questioned it. So it was about building that trust, having that safe environment, and then giving them that encouragement to go and play lots of different sports in competitions and taking them out of that comfort zone. So I think that's what MSA have done, is worked with like national governing bodies to build that relationship and give them that insight of what's required to make our communities engage in sports a little bit more better.
Thank you. That's really insightful. Thanks for sharing. Matt, it would be great to hear a little from you now about chaplaincy. So perhaps for those who don't know, could you tell us briefly what the role of a chaplain is? But also it'd be good to hear how the role of chaplains might have changed over time as well.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of the role of a chaplain, we often use the phrase, we're a Christian organisation, but we use the phrase that we're pastorally proactive and spiritually reactive. So what I mean by that is we're pastorally proactive in caring for everybody within the club, within the sport that we're involved in. So I use myself as an example at Charlton. I'm keen that all members of staff, players, non-player members of staff, know that I'm there for them to talk to about anything. They're not going to get judged by me. They're not going to get me forcing any kind of faith or religion down their throats, but I'm there to offer that kind of support to them and be around the place. We'll talk about COVID, I'm sure, a little bit in terms of how that's affecting us with the pandemic. One of the challenges we've got in chaplaincy at the moment, as everybody else has, is it's about being physically present in your sport and in your clubs and on touchlines. And of course, that's very difficult. We're fortunate that elite sport, particularly with football, is carrying on, but chaplains being in there, being physically present is not so easy at the moment, although some still are, and I'm one of those. So that's the pastorally proactive side of things. And then there's the spiritually reactive. And so we don't apologize for the fact that we are coming from a spiritual perspective, and we are Christians as an organization in that sense. But we want to make sure that people feel comfortable, if they've got a faith, that they're able to express that within their club or within their sport. And we can help with that. We can help signpost to other organizations. So I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit more, but I've seen in the 21 years that I've been involved in it an increase in terms of players of faith within elite sport. There are football matches on tonight, and you will probably see Muslims and Christians, not so many Jewish players, unfortunately, playing in elite sport at that level, but definitely Muslim and Christian players. And you will see that, and that'll be quite evident for some of them in some of the goal celebrations and coming onto the pitch and things like that. That's something that's definitely changed. And so we've seen within the Premier League, the EFL and the PFA, so that's the Football League and the Players Football Association, we've seen a greater understanding of matters of faith. So faith is much more on the agenda now within elite football, definitely, and other sport as well than it's ever been, which of course I find really exciting. It's a great space to be in at the moment and to be engaging with right across the different faiths.
Great, that's good to hear. It's good to hear there's been that progress. Great, thank you. Sam, is there anything you would like to add about your work and how things have changed over time?
I think from my perspective, to give a bit of background, so a bit older than I look, I was playing football at quite a high level up until the late 90s, and a serious injury that I alluded to earlier ended that kind of opportunity. And one thing that I probably realize now, looking back on it, now that I'm a coach, now that I work in sport for development, now that I support organizations like Muslim Sports Association and beyond, is how much unconscious bias that I had actually encountered. The casual comments, there was also conscious bias, the racism at grassroots all the way through, or just he doesn't look right, he doesn't act right, he's not one of us, having to try harder. And I've learned that now as I've entered my 40th year on this planet that we call Earth, compared to what if I knew then what I knew now, is that mindset. And I think the biggest challenge that we have in the chaplain, what Matt said is really interesting. I mean, I've worked at football league level as well. I spent 8 years at Brentford within their community department. So I know clearly what he's saying does happen. The biggest challenge is the disproportionate effect that the grassroots has. They don't have access to the Matts of this world. It's obvious why, because there's only so many Matts that we can have, and you know, and that's a challenge. And there's that disconnect that I spend a lot of my time working on, which is how do we ensure that the youth clubs, that the MSAs of this world, that my organization, that the communities actually completely are given an offer that suits them so that they can develop grassroots. So a great football club in the other side of London, Senrab FC, that those clubs don't disappear, because those are hubs. And that is where our young people learn about faith, because it's a melting pot. It mirrors what society is giving them. But with what we've now seen with the pandemic, but also moving backwards to just austerity, how affected those groups are, because we cannot get fully rounded young people unless they're invested in via those clubs and organizations. And I know Charlton well from my community club days, because we would engage with each other on programs like Kicks and other Premier League back schemes. And if a club runs out of money, it can't pre or post pandemic send a bunch of kids from one part of the city to another to engage, to talk and use sport as a way to glue each other together. So kind of my perspective is, why did I get into sport? And I'm thinking about that now. For me, when I stopped playing, so I knew why I started playing. It was because it was a great way for me to spend time with my friends. And it was a fantastic way for me to just do something other than sit in a classroom. I wasn't built for that. I was built for being outdoors. When I finished playing at any serious level, I went traveling. And I wanted to know, this is what Sam thinks, but what does everyone else think? And I went around the world and I met people. I ended up going to other parts of the world. And I actually began to realize clearly, it doesn't matter what language you speak. It doesn't really matter what your faith is. Sport means something to you, and it gives you something that nothing else can give you. So why is it that we have certain issues like we're seeing now recently, again, social media with abuse of sports players? Why do we see racism on the pitch? Why do we hear of ceilings within this industry? It's fairly obvious why. It's because people have forgotten what sport is about, and it's become a money generating product. And we can see clearly there are issues with that, with now the pandemic affecting the financial capacity of those organizations. Suddenly we're looking at Black Lives Matter and, oh, we've got a diversity and inclusion program. Well, it's about 50 years too late for the communities that we need. It's good, but it's not appropriate, because people want action now. They don't want buzz terms and words. They want communities to be represented. So for me, for example, with my day job with Laureus, I've joined the Global Diversity Inclusion Working Group, not because I want to sit listening to people. I want to clearly tell people what Yasmin is telling me about representation for women, but also hearing about what Matt's doing, because I also want to, there's a place for faith, all faiths. Whether you believe in God or don't believe in God, you believe in something. And actually, if sport is helping you to have a good mainstream life, why are you not represented? So that's kind of my mission at the moment. And on top of that, to work out where I sit. There are a few things there.
Thank you, Sam. That's really helpful, and moves us towards talking about needs now, actually. And I think that would be a great place to go now next. So let's talk about, what do the communities you work with need when it comes to this area, in terms of the last few years, but also if you want to say anything about the pandemic as well, what's changed for you and what the needs are at this moment. Would anyone like to start?
Yeah, I think I'll start. I think when I started MSA, it was very much about the industry saying to us, we have a sports session, this is how we run it, we expect you to come. If you don't engage, then you're hard to reach, and that's how they term us. And what I did with MSA is take the session to them in the environment that my community wanted. So it was a female-only environment with qualified female coaches. And my advocacy within the sports industry, going to consultations, going to networking groups, and engaging with the national governing bodies was that it was saying you can't just dictate how traditional sports should be run. You need to make adaptations to the sports and go to the community and ask them how will they engage. If it's football, do they want a mother and daughter session? Or if it's fencing, should it be more social? It was thinking outside the box so that they could engage. And what we found was that women were more likely to engage if it was in a space that they felt comfortable in. Not necessarily the mosque or anything, but just a space that they felt comfortable in at a time that suited them. So it was more about understanding what our community and how they worked. And I think a lot of the sports industries don't understand that. They just think, right, we'll just give you a pot of money, we expect you to put on the sessions, and we expect ladies to come. If they don't come, or if the community doesn't come, they're just termed as hard to engage. But if you look up and down the country, you will see respective MSA sort of associations or charities all doing very good work, but the likes of Sport England don't know about them because they don't engage with them. And I think with COVID now, we've seen higher inactivity rates, especially for the Asian community and the Muslim community. So we've had to put a lot of things online just to keep the ladies engaged. And what we've started is positive mind workshops. So it's a weekly session where we ask lots of sisters to come in and talk about faith and talk about positive mindsets. And that's really helped the ladies that feel very isolated, especially with homeschooling and not being able to go out. They've just have that hour and a half to just talk to other sisters about their faith, about positive thinking. And that's just broken the cycle up, the day up, and just giving them a different outlook, just for, just even have a friendly chat for that hour and a half. And that's really, we've seen a really positive impact with more and more ladies joining that session.
Thank you. Ashley, I'd be interested to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think from a Jewish perspective, I think there's a few things. I think a bit like Yashmin was saying, I think for the Jewish community, there's been there are restrictions, that are observance levels and making sport accessible. Female sport is within the community is something that, as an organisation, we strive for, but it's a slow and long process, and keeping women engaged in quality provision is also difficult. So, for example, our men's and boys football leagues, they play, I would say 99% will have dispensations play on a Sunday, because Saturday is the Sabbath, and although not everyone is religious within and observant within the community, the majority would go to the highest level of respect, which would mean that we wouldn't want to play on a Sabbath, on a Saturday, so it'd be a Sunday. But I know in terms of in the area of the London area, there are limited opportunities for female leagues to take place on Sundays. They are on Saturdays, so that's another barrier, because then you get to a certain level and you can't then compete. I think there's obviously, as Yashmin was saying, about modesty and being able to wear, feel comfortable and confident to be Jewish in your appearance, be male or female. And unfortunately, players in sport have suffered discrimination and anti-Semitism. As an organisation, we've worked exceptionally hard over the last 2 decades to work with Kick It Out, with the FA, to bring anti-Semitism as something that's actually reviewed. I think back in the day of Kick It Out reporting, it wasn't even an option of reporting anti-Semitism as a separate concern or discrimination that's taking place at elite level sport, whereas now very much is. So working through those areas. I think I think what we're saying as well with what COVID has done is, and I know I've got 2 young kids. PE and sport for my eldest who's 5, which is not part of their curriculum at the moment because they're focusing on, reading, writing, etc. But actually at his age, and I think what we'll find maybe more so, it's, if I use the example, if you play football every week already, once lockdown is over, you're going to go and play football again. But it's those at the extremes. It's the youngest or the newest to sport. I fear that this pandemic, the length of time it's gone over, and the nature of the stop-start that we have within the sporting world, will mean it's going to be harder and harder to bring those new people into play sport. And I think that's a concern that I have and we have going forward. And on discrimination, again, I'm just looking on Twitter. I know Ian Wright and the case against him. The judge, I think, said that the young man who was, I think, relatively very young, gave off with a warning because he was naive in terms of his discrimination and racist abuse to Ian Wright. And that at the top level of what's being done, and so public, in terms of lack of accountability and and actually being able to have an ability to actually what is right and wrong. And if that at the elite level is not there, then I worry about grassroots level, and it's our objective and our it's our mission to make sure that we are respectful of everyone that we're playing with and come on the football on the sporting pitch with, and that otherwise what chance of society got if we can't do it on the sporting field. So a lot of challenges I think within upcoming, but things like this is just great, and being able to talk and discuss and share experiences.
Thank you. Matt, Sam, anything you would like to add about challenges you see in your work?
Yeah, just picking up on Ashley and Sam's point there, really. I think that we need both a top-down and a bottom-up approach with this. We need those examples right at the top of sport. For example, Paul Elliott is a name you might know. Now, Paul Elliott I know very well, involved in the FA and the new leadership charter and the pathway that's being brought in for BAME coaches, etc. I think it's fantastic at that level. We've had people like Marcus Rashford that people are seeing as a real role model at the moment, and I think that's really encouraging and really exciting. But I think it needs to go on at the grassroots level as well, and we need to have both of those conversations going on. There's a need for that all the way through, and I think that there's, I know I'm a bit biased towards football, but football is seen by so many throughout the nation. I think there's an opportunity within football to model something really positively. Again, I'm going to use my own club as an example, but Interfaith Week back in 2015, I believe that we were the only football club to put an interfaith event on. Now, we did that. We're based in Southeast London, a real ethnic mix all around us. We had people, we're about 100 people from, 10, 12 different faiths coming together, local authority, local police, football, university, all coming together in the same room discussing things. And I brought in 2 footballers into that. I had a Muslim player talk about his faith and a Christian player talk about his faith as well. And I get goosebumpy just talking about that, because I think being in that space together as neighbours, as friends, having those conversations, breaking down what often is, we know this, it's ignorance when it comes to these issues, breaking that down and seeing people as humanity together makes a big difference. Now, I say that's what we've done at my club. I'd love to see other clubs doing that, but again, not just at elite, all the way down. Let's see that at grassroots with local football, tennis, cricket, gyms, whatever it may be. And if we're in that together, I think that, I'm not naive. I'm incredibly sad about some of the things that have happened in football. Even Ian Wright's been mentioned. I spoke to a black manager on the phone last week, and I was really sad to hear him saying it's not going to change. That was his view. This is not going to change. And so I'm sitting there as a white man, and I can't completely climb into his shoes, of course. But I want to say, what if we can help it change? If maybe I'm being idealistic. But we need that, I think, passion amongst ourselves, amongst this sort of group and others, to say, no, it doesn't have to be like that. there can be a change that we can move towards together, but it's going to be slow. But I'm going around in circles there, but it's top down and it's bottom up as far as I'm concerned, all the way through sport. And I think these sort of things are vital for us to be able to do that together.
Thank you, Matt. That's really helpful. And I'd love to hear some more examples from any of our panelists, really, of positive change happening. So some interventions that you've been part of or you've seen where there has been progress in terms of breaking down barriers or opening up positive conversations about faith and belief in the sporting world. So Matt's example there was really helpful, but what else have you seen that you think initiatives that have worked really well that you'd like to see more of?
It was World Hijab Day on 1st of February. So we had Nike who launched a promotion on social media about, obviously they do the Nike Hijab sportswear gear. So that was really positive because they sort of showcased a lot of the Muslim girls doing a variety of sports in the Muslim hijab. So, you know, things like that, it's just making it normal. This girl making it normal that, you know, Muslim girls do participate in sports. It's not unusual. It shouldn't be a wow factor. Anyone of any faith can participate in sports. It doesn't have to be that wow factor. And I think the more we see it, the more normal it will become. And you know, organizations need to start diversifying their images that they use. It shouldn't be just the same old images of the same old people. It needs to be diverse so that more people feel connected. I know as I was growing up, as I said, the sports world felt inaccessible for me. There weren't enough people who looked like me. So if we can show younger generations that people look like them are in the sports world, regardless of faith, that everyone is welcome, then we will have a positive change, and more of those sort of things need to come out through those big organizations.
Yeah, great. Anyone else have any examples they'd like to share?
Something that we worked on with the FA, I can't take credit for as well, but we contributed it's just about education and the faith calendar that gets sent out to all football clubs, and it just gives some really bite-sized information and the holy days for each faith. I think it's just something really simple, and yeah, it's some you know, ignorance isn't an excuse anymore, and actually there's so much information out there. But yeah, I think, and I know you talk. Yashmin talks about, you know, images, and I think it's great in those documents as well. It just shows the diversity of the society we live. So yeah, proud of that project that we work with the FA on.
Just picking up on that with Ashley as well, and I knew your predecessor Martin. We sat on a few committees together, but the faith calendar is very good. You're absolutely right, and I have some input into that, and I ensure that gets sent out to all chaplains every year when it comes out. And I'm encouraging clubs and different sports right throughout the UK actually to have that up in the club, you know, to have it on the wall and to be recognising the different, you know, the different key religious dates that there are throughout the year. I think those little things, yeah, the big things make a difference, but the little things really do as well. That's what gets under people and changes attitudes as well. So yeah, totally agree with you on that one, Ashley.
Yeah, the FA had a Ramadan fact sheet as well that they circulate, which MSA contributed as well. So, you know, things like that, we assume people know about religious aspects, but a lot of people don't know about our faiths. So these little fact sheets that have bite-sized information, you know, the clubs, the coaches, they will understand if a person is fasting or if it's a day that they can't participate well in, you know, why are they fasting? You know, just to have that little bit of background and what is allowed, what isn't allowed, if they need to pray, you know, that sort of information can just build a better relationship between the coach and the player as well. So the player feels more welcome within the club. And it's really important that, you know, other sports, not just football, but other sports starts taking the lead in that as well.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great.
A little plug, sorry, of what we're doing this week as well, which I think there is no positives around COVID. Let's just say that, you know, but the interaction and connectivity some part of the Sport and Faith Festival. You know, this afternoon I took part in on Facebook a 20-minute Buddhist well-being session, and I just would not. I very much doubt I would have had that opportunity. So I think it's about, in these times, you know, everyone's stuck here at home on the screen, and actually being able to share best practices from different faiths and organizations. There is, you know, so much amazing work out there. So I think it's about showcasing and actually using this opportunity where we can't physically just walk, you know, you're not walking into another sports hall or something, but where we can learn and experience other opportunities. So yeah, a little bit of a plug in that, but genuinely I thought it was really meaningful to actually learn around with the background of it as well.
That's great. Yes, everyone should get involved with that. Okay, great. Well, thank you for answering all of many of my questions. I have got another I'd like to ask, but first I'd like to kind of invite everyone in the room to share any questions you have in the chat. I know there's a lot of expertise in the room here. We have folks from faith organisations, we have folks from sports organisations. So please, is there any advice, expertise, experience you would like to draw on from the panel here tonight? So put your questions in the chat, and I may call on you to, if you don't mind, unmute yourself and ask a question. Great, first question looks really interesting. Ben, are you happy to unmute yourself and ask a question aloud for the panel?
I think it might be working.
Yeah, we can hear you, Ben.
Amazing. Well, I mean, the question I had was just about university spaces, like that first stage after school for a lot of people, and sports and faith. I remember there was like a lot of drinking, but a lot of other things that made some of those sports like spaces quite uncomfortable for people of faith. And so I was just wondering, like, you know, what if any of you are doing anything in that space to try and like make sure people of faith are included at university sports.
Great, thank you, Ben, for your question. Really interesting. Yeah, who has something
I'm happy
to share
to
on
answer.
this one? Yeah, please, Sam.
Ben, that's a really good question. If I rewind back to my university days, which were in the late 90s, you kind of hit it spot on. Although I'm from a British Asian background, I went to Wolverhampton University, and it was a huge shock for me because although I was from West London, most of my young life had been around quite an Ealing is where I'm originally from. So that kind of those of you who know what Ealing's like, it replicates the most of the capital city. It's quite a mix. I went to Wolverhampton, and it was just, to be blunt, it was full of Asians, and it was a real culture shock for me. And sport was again a way I tried to engage, but that drinking culture was something that I did find a bit strange. And the other thing was, which some of you will be aware of with university, certainly it still happens now, but it happened a lot in there, was groups, the Hindu society, the Sikh society, the Muslim society. And that I found very strange, because I would ask questions of those groups. This is before I went into coaching, just as a student. Why do you need a group to represent you when you're meant to be at university? And it was just an honest question. Why do you need a group to represent you when you're meant to be at university to ingratiate yourself? And some of the responses were fair. We don't feel represented. We don't feel there's a place for us. And I think that still happens. Some of the work I've done, for example, with St. Mary's University via my own organisation at Twickenham, they focus very much, it's well-known sports science university. So sport is one of their kind of key areas. But one thing they work very closely on is the fact that they have students from all over the capital city who come from different backgrounds, faiths, have different interests, but they're all there fundamentally for studying, but also for the social side. So they adapt the offers and they work closely with those groups, those faith groups. And we've heard, those of you have heard stories of, unfortunately, certain groups being infiltrated by organizations that want to use young people for other things, such as grooming for, potentially terrorism or beyond. However, that is more of an opportunity for the university to actually get to know its young people more. And certainly from some of the work I've done, where I've gone in and just had discussions with young people as a sports coach and a mentor, one of the things I am noticing is that the offers are being tailored much more. So when students come in, there is an opportunity for them to discuss their needs with the equivalent of, a counsellor or somebody there. And when I say counsellor, I don't mean therapy, just an individual who they can turn to, who's a student further down the line, or is a former student who's just involved to help them with their pathway and to keep them doing much more than just turning up and banging out sessions. as in modules and lectures. So there's a lot going on. Just a final point with that, with kind of sports spaces, a lot of those universities are becoming quite adaptive and offering spaces to organizations like myself, so that we can come in and deliver community programs for the wider community, for those students to also be involved, which is quite exciting because some of those facilities are the best in the area, being universities. So it's an income generator from them, but it can develop partnerships as well, which again allows for students to get involved in things that they didn't before. But there are definitely challenges. And I think with some of the changes that the pandemic will have caused about affordability, universities are going to have to think a bit more about actually how, a bit like private schools, how do they get more involved in their community moving forward?
Thank you, Sam. Would any of the other panelists like to share something about university spaces?
We've had a number of girls come to us and ask whether we can help them set up sort of their netball teams and their football teams. So we're seeing more and more of that, where faith girls want to break away from the usual university because they don't feel that they gain equal opportunity to enter into those teams. So they may be able to play, but they're not chosen to play sort of like in the team. So they break away and want to set up their own team so that they can continue playing the sport. So I found that a little bit strange as well, because I thought university, as Sam says, should be a place where everyone has fun and gets to know each other, integrate. But there are little pockets where they're just being sidelined and not having the same access as you would expect at university.
We have another question in the chat. Fias, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Oh, it's there now. Yeah, so Faith here from the Ismaili community in the UK. One of the challenges I think we face is critical mass, almost, in terms of numbers within the community, and just want to get a sense from the panel or the group in terms of what you've seen work successfully in terms of facilitating sustainable engagement is one of the challenges we have, especially with respect to females, in that it's very difficult to get a number or a sustainable number or a sufficient number in order to create a group that enters a team into a competition or into an event. And often it's individuals who enter into a space, and it applies very much in a cultural or a faith context, but I can imagine it applies across, any individual, regardless of creed or faith, in terms of entering a new environment where there is no familiarity or there is no previous connection. How, from your experiences, you're seeing success in this space in terms of, is it a requirement that you have 4 or 5 individuals, male or female, entering a team into a place, or are you seeing success with individuals being supported by your various organizations in terms of then creating sustainable engagement? I think opening the door and getting someone to attend one session is generally something you can achieve, but creating that sustainability is something that I'd be interested to kind of see where success stories have been seen or observed.
Great point, great question, thank you.
So I'll start with that one. So as I said, basketball, we had for many months, just me, the coach and another lady attend, and everyone around me said, just give it up, it's not going to be successful, but I persevered. And it was about getting that trust and engagement from our community and asking them to just trust us and see what we're all about. And I think for funders, it's about the numbers. But they need to get past that. Sometimes it's about quality and just that engagement, whether you're engaging 5 ladies, whether you're engaging 20 ladies, it's that first step that they've come into that sports hall to try something new. And from that, what we've done is create that social aspect. It's not, the emphasis is not on the sports, it's the social interaction. So it's not very structured. They've come in, it's not like, all right, that's it, start doing the drills, start doing the warm up. It's very social. So if they don't want to stay on the field or the court for 5 minutes, they can easily come off, have a chit chat with their mates if they want to. And that's what we found, is that they came for that social aspect, and that's what helped them come again and again and again. It was, the sports was secondary to that social interaction. For them, it was those 2 hours a week was their me time. And once they sort of found that, it was really important that they came every week and they started making that time for themselves, whether they were married or not. It was like the husband's in at 7 o'clock, I'm at the door. I've done everything. Your responsibility now is the kids. I'm going off to badminton for my 2 hours of my me time. And the emphasis was on that, having that time for themselves. And once they established that, you know, it was word of mouth. So then they told their friends and their friends would come. So that social aspect is very, very important. Is having a good coach who understands the community that they're engaging with, the culture that they're engaging with, religion or no religion, it doesn't matter, but understanding that those women that they're trying to engage with and what it is that they require. Do they want 45 minutes of pure adrenaline, sort of like warm-ups and drills and playing games, or do they want that social aspect in that as well? It's really understanding what the community you're trying to engage with is.
I'll just jump on that. I think for the Jewish community as well, I keep saying the number 280,000 members, the community, to actually get a sustainable, outside of football. I think football in itself is relatively easy, but trying to get a sustainable model. You know, there's an international games every 4 years that takes place in Israel, the Maccabi Games. And it feels like every cycle we're having to start again to try and get maybe the minority sports, the smaller sports, because especially within the school system, it's football or it could be rugby. But I think it's so difficult to get that level of buy-in for it to be something that is like a memory that you're going each week to do it. I agree with Yashmin. I think quality coaching is a must. I think that is essential, you know, that people, they want to actually come and actually they want their time to be valuable. It doesn't have to be, you know, quality coaching isn't like a sergeant major who's just drilling them, but it's actually empathetic, but actually with goals. And what we found as well is trying to just incubate something. We had after the Olympics, we had you know, in 2012, there was a couple of volunteers that were interested in handball. And it was about getting a critical mass of a few volunteers, but really keen, supporting them, you know, in terms of the back end, all the bits they didn't want to do, the office or the administration, and letting them do what they wanted to do, the recruitment, and you know, and even putting a bit of seed money in there as well so that we could subsidize it. But it's tough, you know, it lasted a couple of seasons and then people move on, and it's trying to get the new thing. I think it has to be fun and it has to be enjoyable. But if there is a magic solution out there, let us know, because it's something that we try and do in the smaller sports, and it's not easy. But Yashmin, I'm going to come and speak to you after about fencing, because we actually have that. We have some passionate volunteers, and they're a little bit older, but they've got some juniors that are interested, male and female, and it's about giving them opportunity to actually do that. So again, something I'm going to take on from this after. But it's not easy, but I'll just keep plugging away, and hopefully it come to fruition.
The point to jump in on that, because Ashley's made a really good several points, and Yashmin as well. I see it from both sides of the coin as a grantee, someone who needs to survive through my organization, but I also work for a funder. And Yashmin is right, and she knows this because I advocate what she said about numbers not being relevant, and she knows that from the grant that I fought, and our project that we're doing with Yashmin's organization and others wasn't about numbers. But that's a longer term change, because it's like trying to break tradition. And as I said, ceilings before, change is happening. It's just not happening at a fast enough rate. But the reason why I brought that up is because it's really important. And I use some of the skills I learned outside of sports. My family, they're not involved in sport in any way, shape or form. They're old school business, you know, as many of us will know who are from the same culture as me, typical Asians. You know, my dad started with a shop when he came to this country many years ago, working in it, bought it, whatever. But he taught me something which I use in sport about profiling. You profile the individuals you're working with. And if those of you who know about football, it's like the player profile concept, which is working out why those young people and why they would enjoy the session, who they are, where they come from, what their interests are outside of it. So you're building a relationship, and that links into a bigger sport for development aim for the industry, which is around theory of change. And to take out the jargon, essentially, it's your organization. What are you trying to achieve through that session? Because actually, sometimes what we all will do is, Yash and I know this, we've adapted our offer to get the fund. and that damages what you're trying to do, but that's the way funding works. So what I try and do now is I'm really picky over which funds I bid for. I know that's not so easy for people, and Ashley said that, you know, if there was a solution, we'd all be rich by now because we'd have found out a way to get it. But it's important to project plan what you're doing and not just look. The coaching is one massive aspect, but it's actually thinking clearly about, if it's a 6-month program, what do we want to achieve? Do we need numbers, or is it just we want to test out something like a handball program? Or does that actually need numbers, or does it just need some input which we can then take to a funder because we've done a pilot and then look at that? There are actually organizations out there that can help you. You've got London Sport, you've got Sported, you've got, to a certain extent, the Faith and Belief Forum, who will have examples of people who have been successful. So it's also not just what you know, it's the classic who you know, and reaching out to organizations and looking and asking, is there an opportunity to even collaborate with a local or pan city organization who can mentor me a little bit and give me practical examples, rather than, look, it's great we're doing this workshop like this tonight, but having practical chats with organizations who, when it's safe, can come and invite you, or you go and see them, actually how they work with their kids. That's really important. But I think it's really important, as I don't want to be rude, but focus less on the numbers, focus more on why they're doing it. And that will take you onto new adventures. And look at successorship. Are some of those females that you're working with, are they good enough to go into volunteering or move into other pathways to help you develop a youth forum? That actually, a lot of funders want that. They want youth voice within the programs. So is it an incubator? Could it be something you use in a different way to test out new projects and ideas that you're thinking of? Just a few thoughts.
Really interesting. Enjoyed that question. Yes, go on.
With the football, as I said, it started off with that we wanted it for the women only, but then we had them inquiring whether they can just drop their daughters off, and we turned it into a mother and daughter session, and that ran for 2 years. And we tried several times to try and get them confident enough to join a team, to join a league, and it took 2 years for them to build that trust with us, for them to then eventually get only 5 ladies, only 5. We had no subs to go and play that first competitive game. So it's about time. It's about investing your time and nurturing them as well, about what your aims and objectives are. How, if they don't want to, some of them just want to play social, they don't want to play competitively, and just allow them to do that. Just make sure that you have that door open for them. But there's also that pathway. If they want to play competitively, then you're also there providing that opportunity as well. So sustainability isn't just about the numbers and how long you can run a session. It's about giving them those opportunities and accessibility into other areas. So it may be that they start at yours and then join a club. That's success to me. If we have fencers that have started social fencing, now gone on to join clubs. That's a huge success for me. So I don't need to keep doing fencing if they're going on to clubs and joining fencing clubs. So that's also something that you need to look at, is the pathways that they can maybe turn after your 6 months project is finished. Can you direct them into something else?
Thank you. Before we move on to the networking portion of this event, tonight is all about connecting and learning from each other. And so I'm interested in Tim's question in the chat here, which is also about connection and interfaith learning. So Tim, are you there, and would you like to unmute and ask your question to the panel?
Hello. I'm here. My question was about how the best ways that we can encourage people from different faiths and different backgrounds to connect through sport. And I'm aware of like a couple of sort of interfaith programs in the past that have used sport to create tournaments where actually then you ended up with like a team of Christians like competing against a team of Muslims, and I'm not sure if that did build genuine connection or if it almost sort of built pride within groups, and I feel like there must be a better model than that, but I'm not sure what it is, so just interested to hear any thoughts from the panel.
I'm happy to jump in on this because I worked on a program which I alluded to earlier, which used cricket, Tim, for that kind of process, called Breaking Boundaries, which I briefly spoke about before. The concept there was exactly what you said, that sport can be a glue, but it can also disconnect groups. And what that program did, and again, Yash will know a little bit about it because they were involved in it in year one, which was about, it had two elements to it. One was the activity, which we had a grant for, but in order for them to get the grant and the activity, which was a group to work with another group, so to put it in plain English, like for example, a mosque to work with even just a school that has predominant white British maybe demographic, to run an event. So it could be a cricket event, it could be a cricket dance event. I just had to have cricket within it because we were funded by a number of funders that were using cricket. What we did was we bolted in the second element, which was cohesion training. So in other words, what that means, to take out the jargon, was in order for them to be involved, two things had to happen. One, the adults weren't allowed to write the bid, the young people had to write the bid. Secondly, they had to commit themselves to some training from experts who were grassroots specialists who understood how to build trust quickly and engage with them and get their views and their maybe views of the community that they lived in to dispel it. And then the final aspect, once those two elements, like 3 training workshops over several months, and then they would submit a bid, which had to include an element of contact that we brokered, like safe space contact between some of those young people who'd already met on the training. They then were able to go off and deliver. I think there's an element there that was put in through a bit of research, was that people like to spend time doing things they enjoy together in safe places. And in that instance, it was young people talking about their lives, using sport as the glue, and then giving them a bit of a carrot at the end, rather than just saying, here's a tournament, turn up. The word tournament itself can be disproportionate. It's about winning. And as we know, the whole point of, for example, with faith is it's about the community, treating my neighbor as I'd like to treat myself. So I think sport itself sometimes has a bit of an identity issue that actually, if you look at it from a slightly more cohesive angle and you look at getting people involved in discussions about how they want that sport to be delivered, they feel part of the process. And it's worked fairly well because we've been doing it for 2.5 years. And we've got lots and lots of young people who say they've now found that sport can do much more than just teach them about winning and losing. It teaches them about commitment, effort, self-discipline, communication skills. Oh, and also learning about other faith groups. And that's just a bit of cricket.
Great example. Thanks, Sam. Any other examples?
Oh, I'd say I really echo what Sam said around sport, and actually it's sort of setting people up for a fail if we're just doing you know, Jews v Christians. It's just, you know, if there's no education about it, you know, the nature of sport and getting people to compete is to win, and I think that's, I mean, we've been very picky, and we picked and chosen when we've taken part in these incidents. More exhibition type matches rather than actually any meaningful educational component that come out of it. But what I think, again, apologies for another plug, but what I think, if you take the competitive nature out of it and use sport and well-being as a positive, what we're aiming to do with the fun run in August is actually bringing people together on a level playing field. It doesn't matter if you can run 1K, 5K or walk it, but actually it's about coming and experiencing something together and taking the sport as a community, as opposed to a win or lose, because I think that'll be there. And I saw in the chat there was another comment around sort of food, and I think that in a way, you know, again, what we want to achieve from the fun run in August is actually for people to bring their own culture and identity, and certainly food plays a big part in that. And so, yeah, I wouldn't be starting to pit a tournament against, I think very, very hard about pitting a tournament against with different religions and trying to use that as sort of faith, but actually how we can even playing field, how we can learn from each other's culture in a meaningful way. And I think yeah, there's some good examples, and hopefully a byproduct of working in this group is that we can bring people together for the run with Faith and Belief Forum and the Faith Council in August to actually be a real, you know, festival of celebration and sport and coming together and sharing each other's community and learning from each other.
Indeed, it's really exciting. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that question, Tim. I am keen to move to some breakout rooms and for a bit of networking, and then we'll just do that for about 10 minutes or so. It's just an initial chat. Kind of, there's so much expertise and variety of organisations people are from here. So let's go into breakout rooms for 10 minutes. And when we get back, I'll invite the panelists if they want to share any final reflections on this theme before we close for the night. And also guests, if you want to share any final reflections, you'll be welcome to as well. We will be finishing by 9. So let's get going with the breakout rooms. Oh, and one thing to say, if you need any support or help from the host while you're in the breakout room, there's an ask for help button, which you can use for sort of alert that something's happening. And if you go into your breakout room, have a little bit of a chat and you fancy swapping to another breakout room, you can just press the leave meeting button. You'll come back into the main room and just let Nick know who's helping with tech, and he can put you into a different room. You can chat to some new people. Okay, so let's go. Nick, when you're ready to set those breakout rooms off, we should all get an alert to join a room. So, panelists, I'd love to invite you just to reflect on what we've heard tonight, anything you're taking away or any note you want to leave people on about this topic that we've been discussing tonight, which is engaging with faith communities in sport. So who would like to kind of round us up first?
Just to kind of throw it out there is that there's a lot of, it's a creative sector that we're all working in, volunteering in, participating in, and to focus on yourselves and to not worry so much about your neighbour in that negative way. They're getting funding, maybe it's even worth reaching out to them. And in a time where we're being asked clearly to think about why we do what we do to stay safe, there is an opportunity there within itself to use forums like this for your benefit. So it can be daunting, it can be challenging coming into a room and hearing, I don't know it all. And Ashley was saying earlier about experts. I am far from an expert. I've just done this in a really bloody minded way because I don't want to go and work in the corporate sector. I just enjoy this more. And I think it's important to focus on that. This is a vocation, not a job. A job pays your bills. A vocation gets you out of bed on those wet days, which we've had many of. And nothing worth having comes easy. That's what I tell all the children that I've coached, or even Yasmin and I talk about it all the time. This industry we're in can be relentless, but you're all part of the change. It just doesn't always feel that way. So just remember that there are people who do support you. They just don't always say it, but they do support you. So keep doing what you're doing.
I think also we shouldn't forget our faiths are not our barriers, and although we sometimes think that people outside see our faith as a barrier, our hijabs are not a barrier, our kappa is not a barrier. None of that is a barrier. It's about understanding us and what our requirements are and just adapting a little bit. It's just small changes about which hall to choose or which coach to use, or just what time is best for our community. We need to change the mindsets of the industry, and it's up to us to change that narrative. They're not going to change it without knowing what our requirements are. And it's just being a bit more vocal, a bit more just having that dialogue. As Sam said, we need to get ourselves out there, just shout about what we're doing, because I think there's a lot of great work being done and not everyone knows about us. So shout about what we're doing.
I would echo that as well. And I know personally work so very siloed a lot of the time, the Jewish community and what we're doing. And I think it's so important for events like this. And actually, the numbers, let's just say, it's more we're talking to ourselves at the moment, but actually what we're able to do in this time is to magnify this or amplify this across social media. And this should hopefully be one of the starts of the conversation, not the end. And actually, how can we best learn off each other? How can we have these meaningful interactions where we're not just playing sport for sport's sake, we're learning about each other, because I know for the Jewish community as well, we are very much can be seen as an insular community, but I genuinely believe that as each year goes on, there's so much more of an acceptance and a desire and a want to do more, interfaith, multi-faith, cross-faith, however you want to term it, with the society that we live in. And sometimes it's just a little bit unsure of where to start or how to start. So I really welcome this opportunity, and hopefully through amplifying this in social media and showing our organizations we can connect with more people, and yeah, probably the challenge is now where do we take this next, rather than just this being the end of the conversation.
And I'd encourage us to tell the good stories as well. There's a lot of bad stories out there, and it's bad stories that sell papers and all that kind of stuff. But actually telling the good stories, people, I think, perhaps particularly at the moment, people want to hear some good stories about what's going on. We can tell some good stories about how we work together. We can tell some good stories about what's going on in faith communities, and put a smile on people's faces, and then change some attitudes with that as well. That helps to break down the ignorance. I know I've already referred to the interfaith event that we did at my football club, but there are people who wouldn't have heard about that. That was a good story. We need to celebrate those things and tell others and encourage others to do them. And it's through telling the good stories that I believe, will make a difference.
Thank you, Matt. Great. Well, it's time for us to sign off. It was really lovely to be with you all here tonight, and thank you for joining and making the time to kind of discuss and explore this issue together. As has been said, hopefully this is just the start of the conversation. Please do stay in touch with the Faith and Belief Forum, Maccabi GB, get involved with the Interfaith Fun Run initiative. I hope to see you all again very soon as part of that project. I think, yes, Nick has shared in the chat a link if you want to share any feedback on what you enjoyed about tonight's event. We'd love to hear that. And yeah, that's it from us. Please stay in touch and take care and have a good rest of the evening. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Phil. Take care.